Morning. Hope you're all doing great today. Today, it's going to be a bit of a challenging message as we continue our walk through marriage and family. So up front, I just want to set the stage for what today is and isn't. I come from a broken home. My dad, he left when I was 5 years old, and I know what the pain of brokenness can do. And chances are that many of us here either have been in a broken home as a child or maybe a spouse. And so I just want to set the tone that today is not about the past. Today is about now and the marriages that we're in or the ones that we want to have as we give them to the Lord. So that's where we're going today. And when the hard parts come, know that we're in it together, okay? Is that good? So a quick question is, are we up on the screen? Good. Why do people get married? And how seriously do they really take them? Now, people do get married for a lot of very strange reasons, and we're going to take a look at that in a minute. There's, up on the board, you're going to see some funny, strange, and downright immoral reasons that people get married sometimes. You ready for a list? Here we go. This is what people you know are getting married for. Number one, employment insurance. People have gotten married for insurance. The partner's child as a tax dependent. How about less worrying about STDs? Let's just move on from that. Family tuition discount at an out-of-state university. My wife actually knew someone in college who did this. Marriage didn't last. Wow, that's weird. I wonder why. Have better parents. I don't like my parents. I like yours. I'll marry you and hang around your family. Have someone to take care of you when you feel bad. Don't bug me when I'm fine, but when I'm sick, please be around me. Dependable, well, you know. Okay. Expensive wedding gifts. All the stuff that you get when you get married. You could buy a house with the wedding gifts, and people will get married just for that and last just long enough to kind of build up a collection and move on. Or special occasion gifts. People actually get married for that stuff. For Mother's Day, Father's Day, anniversaries, push presents. There are push presents. Do you know what a push present is? You should look it up. It's like having a baby is not enough. We have to add pressure and have a present you have to give when you do that. People get married for that stuff. I read a whole blog by a lady who has been having a 10-year affair. One different person a month. It's a blind date affair through this company. And the reason she gave is because, Mother's Day came and my husband didn't give me a big enough diamond ring. It's like, nothing says love with that kind of pressure. That's really cool. So now would be a great time to just hug your husband or wife and say, thanks for not being a complete weirdo. I mean, that's totally bizarre. That blew me away. But here's some even stranger reasons why people have gotten divorced. Are you ready for this? Okay. Allergies. I'm allergic to you. The commute was too long. There are studies that say if you drive more than 45 minutes to work and back, then your chances of divorce grow. Commutes are too long. People get divorced over that. Partner smells bad. Spent too much time in the bathroom. Was not getting enough of those marriage gifts. We just talked about that. I love this one. Unexpected ugliness. She was hot when we got married, but something happened, and all of a sudden, this is not the person I remember. It happened. The spouse wanted to live out 50 Shades of Grey. These are real, people. People got divorced over this stuff. How about this? A spouse was too clean. Spouse was too nice. Someone actually divorced and sued their wife for being too nice and too boring. Video games. Looks like, turns out, 8 hours a day is just too much for some people. Really? I think that's probably true. These are sad. A baby was born with a defect. That is a huge cause for divorce. I wanted you and I wanted the great stuff, but man, I don't want that. That's terrible. Spouse got ill or crippled. I actually had an uncle, I remember this from being a kid, who divorced his wife. She was my aunt. She was the sweetest person you could ever imagine, because she became crippled. And he went and divorced her and got somebody else. That's one of the things I'm least proud about in my family, because it's terrible. And the number one reason is the spouse did not like the movie Frozen. The wife said, if he can't find anything he likes about that, there's something wrong. And I think I probably agree with that. You got to find something that you like about that movie. So these are reasons people have gotten married and divorced. And as bizarre as this is, you know what they're not asking? Why does God want marriage? And how does he want us to treat each other? And how strong does he want our marriage to be? So maybe we'll go ahead and move on. Maybe we should ask that question. Well, there are some basic things that we know God created marriage for. If we've been in the church for any length of time, procreation, that's the way you keep the race going, Genesis 1. Intimacy, Hebrews 13. Provision, Ephesians 5. I think we talked a lot about that a few weeks ago. Partnership, Genesis 2. We'll talk about that today. A picture of Christ and his relationship with his church. That we'll cover a lot today. And purity, 1 Corinthians 7. And God has some very specific principles in mind for how marriage should work. And we'll take a look at it up on the board. There are 3 things we're going to cover today: cleaving, committing, and cherishing. If we can keep those 3 things in mind, we'll have the kind of marriage and family that God wants us to have. So we'll talk about these 3 principles, and we'll have a verse section with each one. So we have a lot to cover today, but we'll get through it. So let's first start with cleaving. Go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 18 through 25, and just hold there for a second. Genesis 2, 18 through 25. Before we even touch the verses, let's talk about this word, to cleave, and other words that maybe pop into our mind when we think about that. Here are some words that are common when we think about cleaving. My favorite there is to resist separation. I also like conglutinate, just because it's a fun word. You say conglutinate, and someone might think you have constipation or something. But resisting separation is really awesome. Like glue, or something that's molded and fits to each other's contours. Almost like 2 people have become one. I think it says that somewhere in the Bible. We're about to find out. These are the ideas of cleaving. Now let's read the passage and see what God says about this. Are you ready? Go ahead, go forward. Genesis 2, 18 through 25. The Lord said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I'll make him a helper, a companion." Now, anybody who's had guys around knows the original Hebrew was probably, this dude needs help. Okay, so God says, I'm going to give him help. So God formed from the dirt of the ground all the animals. He brought them to the man, but he could not find a suitable companion. 21. God removed one of the man's ribs and used the rib that he took from the man to make the woman. The man said, "Finally, bone of my bone, one like me, flesh of my flesh. For this reason, a man leaves his father and his mother, he cleaves with his wife, and they become one." This phrase we will come back to several times today. Now, let's hold it right here, and let's have maybe a moment of thought around this passage. The Hebrew word for cleaving was dal bak. It meant to cling to for your life. The root of the word is root. That's really cool. I've never got to say that. The root of this is root. That's really awesome. It's the idea of a root of a plant grinding into the ground and grabbing the sustenance and pushing it up into the plant. Also, a root will hold the plant steady in storms, all kinds of weather. And I think that's a wonderful image of a marriage. And Jesus used the same imagery when he said, "I am a vine. I am clinged to the Father. You cling to me, and I'll cling to you and give you life." Now, considering that our marriage is supposed to be a picture of Christ in us, that's really cool to find out that root is the root of this word. So very awesome. And it's a weird thing, too, because a lot of times when people have been married for a little while, I went through this, my wife went through this, everyone probably goes through this. You get these ideas that, maybe I'm missing something in this. Maybe there's better things out there for me if I just reach out, and maybe I'm trapped in this marriage. I don't have life. I want to reach out here to find something better when you have life right here. if you look at the original sin in the garden, that's exactly what the serpent did. She took Eve, it would have taken either one, and said, God is holding out on you. There's more that you're not experiencing in this trap he has you in. Do what I'm telling you, and you will feel more than you do today. That is what he said, is it not? And it's true, partially. God was holding something out. He was holding bad out. And when we reach out for something else outside of this bond that the Lord has created, it's bad. It destroys us, but we can't always see it when we're there, and it's a sad thing. But the idea of cleaving is there is no outside. You're together now, and you have your life there. Your sustenance is there. We also get the idea of oneness in cleaving. What God put together as one, let no man separate. Whatever is for their bad is for your bad. Whatever is for your good is their good, and their good is your good. We get this idea of, so many times people want to hold back things. I see this over and over with my friends. I want to hold this back. I want to keep this, that, and the other when I go into this marriage because I'm not going to go in and just give up all this. You're supposed to give up everything to go into a marriage, other than Christ, of course. That's the whole point. You lose everything to become more than you were before. That's the idea of what cleaving is. There's nothing held back. So we have the concept there. That's the first thing that the Lord did. You are one being now. What was two is now one. Now there's a part that we need to do. We need to commit to that. That's the second principle of marriage. So let's take a look at this. This is the heart of where we're going today, is commitment. All right, go ahead and go forward. Here's some words that are associated with that. To fully dedicate yourself. To consign. You ever think of that? You're consigning to your wife or your husband? You are. I mean, if you do it God's way, you are. To give entirely to another person. To love, as in the agape kind of love. The for another person. The 1 Corinthians 13 kind. Patient, kind, enduring. Does not want what it does not have. Never gives up, puts up with anything, keeps going till the end. That is a commitment. Now, that is God's design for marriage. Now, here's some background on the verses we're about to touch on. By the time Jesus and Paul came into the world, they were relatively contemporaries. This is not how the world was. It had fallen into a terrible state. There's a thing about us as a race. As soon as we fell, we became twisted with a nature inside that is bent towards things that will hurt us and hurt other people. It's been said that to fall into corruption, all a good man has to do is just let go, and it'll happen. And this is the world that Paul and Jesus lived in. There's three nations we'll talk about: the Jewish nation, the Greek nation, and the Roman nation. Let's kind of cover it. The Jewish culture was bad at this point in time when Jesus came into it. Women had no rights. There was a low view. She was a husband's property. He could do whatever he felt like. Divorce was ridiculously easy. The law, Deuteronomy 24:1, that Moses had laid out, said she could be put away or divorced for any indecency found in her. And it was really easy. All the guy had to do was take a piece of paper, write, "You're out," hand it to her, and she's out, like that moment, out on the street with no way to provide for herself. And it happened constantly. Now, there was a school of thought that was divided here. There was two rabbinical schools. One says, wait a minute, indecent just means adultery. And that is actually what Moses meant. And in fact, the law was you had to divorce someone at that time if they were adulterous. And that is a big thing when you see what Jesus says in a minute. The law is you got to divorce them. But there's another school that said, no. Indecent could be anything that's displeasing, because women are not people. I mean, if she talks out of turn, if she cooks the food bad, if she becomes ugly, you can get rid of her. It's funny how our society is like that now. I mean, with both men and women. I mean, we just said someone got divorced because there was unexpected ugliness. That's exactly what was going on there. These are the people Jesus grew up with. Now, if that's bad, the Greek society was worse. Prostitution was essential in Greek life. Greek men took it for granted that you would have courtesans for pleasure, concubines to spend your time with, and wives for your children and your house. The wives did not have any part in public life. They never even appeared on the streets alone. They did not share meals or any time with their husbands. Did you know that? I mean, that's crazy. The idea that there would be any sort of actual companionship between husbands and wives was completely unheard of in this culture. Oh, and of course, divorce was easy. The men could do it. Okay. If it's bad for the Jews and worse for the Greeks, it was just ugly in Rome. Here's what's going on there. Men and women were throwing God's plan for marriage in the toilet. The situation was so bad that the men did not count the years by numbers. They counted them by the number of courtesans that they had. The women counted their years by the number of husbands they had. This is real. There were people who were married 20 or more times in their lifetimes. Both men and women were switching through spouses like we switch clothes. There was a phrase that said, "The woman flips from house to house wearing out her bridal veils." The marriage bond was in total disarray. These are the people Jesus was talking to and Paul was talking to with the verses we're about to go through. Matthew 19, 1 through 6. Are you ready? Matthew 19, 1 through 6. Okay. One day the Pharisees were badgering Jesus. "Is it legal to divorce his wife for any reason?" He answered, "Haven't you read your scriptures? The Creator originally made man for woman, woman for man, for each other, male and female." And here's our phrase again. "For this reason, a man leaves his father and mother and is firmly bonded to his wife, becoming one. Because God created this union, no one should desecrate his art by cutting them apart." I love that translation. You might see it as, what God has put together, let no man separate. Here's what's happening here. Jesus is responding to religious leaders who are looking for an easy way out. They're looking for the minimum commitment, just like we do today, a lot of times if we're not careful, and certainly the people around us are doing. I mean, what you're trying to do with your marriage is not what the people around you are trying to do, for the most part, with theirs. Remember what the day was like. These people were saying, wait, can't you divorce your wife for any reason? Everyone was doing that, and even the leaders were promoting that. Now, they're also trying to trap Jesus here because there's two schools of thought, and if you can get him to agree with one over the other, then it's a problem. His following starts to subside. But our point for today is they're saying, wait a minute. Can't you get divorced if you want to? Okay. His answer is, take everything back to the beginning. He says, God created one man and one woman. He cleaved them together. Their union was complete and unbreakable. They could not get divorced. There was not even anyone else. And that is the model for you. That's what he's saying. So let's go on. I don't have this next part. I'm just going to read it. The Pharisees shot back and said, wait a minute. Why did Moses give divorce procedures then? Jesus said, oh, that is a concession because you are hard-hearted. We could put it this way. I have been stunned to see that some of my creations have defiled their marriage with stone-hearted, callous, unsparing adultery, shattering their partners. I have seen that, and I'm stunned by it, and it would be unfair to not give them any choice. I mean the victims in that case. That's why he allows it. Okay. That wasn't God's plan. People weren't committing adultery in God's plan. I'm holding you to that plan. If you divorce your husband or wife who has been faithful to you and marry someone else, you are in adultery. That's what he's saying. Okay. This is why in the beginning I said, let's focus on where we are now. Okay. Because this is not about the past, it's now. Okay. I make an exception where your spouse has committed adultery because he or she has already broken the bond. And it's up to you. You can leave it broken if you want to. And here's the hard part. But if you want to be like me, really, it would be better if you didn't. It would be better if even then you could find a way to forgive. Because you know what? When you gave your life to me, I committed to you. This is what the Lord would say. And it didn't matter how well you did after that. That's what commitment looks like. So even then, it would be better if they didn't. What Moses allowed with divorce was not a law. It was a concession that this is a terrible thing to do to someone, and it will break them. Okay. But the original idea was two as one. I mean, if you're one, you cannot divorce yourself, can you? That was the original idea. Okay, so here's an interesting thing to know, by the way. Kiddushin is the word for commitment. It means something totally surrendered to God and to each other. It means losing yourself to gain something better. No outs, no one else for the rest of your life. That is how much God wants you to commit to your marriages. Whether you're married now or you're thinking, I would like to be married someday. Now, some people say, well, I can't do that. That's very difficult to do. Well, it is. And the Lord gives us weapons. When we give our life to Christ, he lives in us to give us strength we don't have. We can direct connect with God any day now, thanks to what the Lord did. We can pray for strength and wisdom. We also have an entire book that gives us armor on what to do to protect our marriages. Now, just to help here, to paint a picture, I'm going to tell you, this is quite transparent, I'm going to tell you what Claire and I do, my wife, to put borders on our marriage. This is our list. It doesn't have to be yours. Okay, here's what we do. We do not spend one-on-one time with anybody of the opposite sex. And whether guys or girls, I don't know what perspective you're coming from, but know that this is our list. Claire did not tell me I had to do this. I did not tell her she had to do this. We decided together. We don't have coffee. I don't have coffee with ladies. She doesn't have coffee with men one-on-one. We don't do lunches. We don't ride in cars. And listen, we don't live in caves. I go all around the world with my company. This is challenging. And there have been times that it's been awkward, and I've had to pray to the Lord, help me find a way to honor my wife and not be too awkward too. And he has done it, but it's not been easy. And in our ministry time, I mean, we worked with teenagers, boys, girls. We worked with their parents who were having issues, breaking up, and they would come to us, and we had to work through that somehow without putting our marriage in jeopardy. So we don't do it. We don't spend one-on-one time at all. We don't take in entertainment that shows men and women in sexual relationships other than the one God had in mind. We just don't do it. You know, we don't even, and this is going to sound crazy, we don't even go to doctors for our regular appointments. I don't go to ladies, she doesn't go to guys. Why? Because we can. We have a choice. So why not? Okay. We pray for each other. I pray for what the Lord is doing in Claire's life and how he wants to lead her. She prays for the same thing with me. And we pray for each other and what the Lord wants to do in our marriage so that we can work for him. There is no my money. There is no her money. We have one bank account, and we can both spend it because we both decide together. I can't stand it when people have, I don't even understand it when people do that. Oh, yes. And we don't ever use each other's marital needs as bargaining tools. Never. And we don't ever threaten to do it either, because that starts to put walls between you. We want to have no walls between us. So those are the things we do. Now, as I said, this is our list. It doesn't have to be yours. But I do highly recommend you come up with a strategy for your marriage. You sit down and you talk about what things are we going to do to build a reasonable barrier around our marriage, because I'm telling you, there are going to be times that pressure will come on you. It's like practice. I mean, you may be saying, well, can't we just trust? You know, yeah, sure. Commitment is a muscle. Will is a muscle. It's kind of like this. You see this little weight here? I mean, this is easy to carry around, so it's not difficult to do that. Okay, I'll find my other way to go to the meeting. I don't have to sit in the car and go with this lady. It's not that difficult. You just exercise it and play around with it and keep using it so that when something heavier comes along, you can lift it, you can bear it, and you can walk around and live your life with it. Does this make sense to you? I hope this stays with you, because I'm telling you, it happens. My wife and I both, in our 18 years of marriage, have had proposals for extramarital affairs. Both of us. Okay? And it's never when we're just all strong. It's when we're weak. The last one I had was when I was in the other side of the world a month ago in India with a lady from my company who was in California. It happens. It's very good to practice so that when the pressure comes down, you've got some discipline. You've predetermined what your answer is going to be. Does that make sense? Okay. So I highly recommend that you do this. I cannot tell you the number of friends I've had, pretty much all of them, from my younger days who got married and said, well, I'm not going to give this up. I've got my rights. I've got girlfriends and lady friends. I'm not giving them up, and I'm not going out and drinking with my friends. No way. No girl's going to do that. Well, they're not married anymore. Wow, that's really surprising. And ladies saying, well, I've got my guy friends. I'm not going to give them up. They're not married anymore. Wow, that's a shock, isn't it? We have some friends, and this is a sad story, but it's a good one too. The husband had an affair with a friend who he'd had for a long time. He eventually left his wife and their 2 kids, by the way. And she tried to hold on to the marriage. She tried, but he just wasn't interested in staying. Eventually, she relented, and they had a divorce. Now, here's what happened. A long time later, this fling ended, and he fell flat on his face like the prodigal son. And that woman, do you know that she went back to him? And she picked him up out of the mud, and she forgave him. They got remarried, and they are working through this. I don't know about you, but that's a stunning picture of commitment on both of their parts, really. It took a lot of effort for him to overcome his shame and go back, and it took even more, I think, for her to take him back. That's awesome. Better it didn't happen, though, right? Better for everybody. It didn't happen. Okay, let's create a picture of this. I'm going to have my wife come up. Okay, this is the action part of the message. This happens in our lives, okay? This is my wife, Claire. She's coming up. She didn't really want to be up here, but she's willing to be. Okay, so here we are. We've been married 18 years. We're happy and doing all sorts of cool stuff. By the way, stop right here. God has used us in a lot of ways. I mean, he's used us as, there you go. Sorry, he's used us. We've worked in child care. We've worked in Sunday school. We've worked in children's church. I've been a deacon. We've been youth ministers together, associate pastor families, all kinds of stuff. And if either one of us had said yes to the temptations that have happened in our marriage, none of that. So it is really bigger than you and me, you know? Okay, so are my issues? Oh, here come my issues. Okay, so here's the thing. Here we are, happy-go-lucky, we're going along, do-do-do-do-do, and temptation comes along, and it grabs my wife. But she's got to say, no, I'm good. Oh, God. That's not what I told her. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so she says, I'm good. Okay, and here I am, and I get sucked into my job. You know, it's like pulling me away, and it's taking me away, and I have to say, nope, I'm good. Okay, I'm fine. Okay, good. Then we're all happy again. Yay, yay, yay. And some sort of addiction happens. It might be pornography. It might be alcohol. Oh, my goodness. It might kill me right here. Okay. Okay, there. So, very good. Thank you for not killing me. All right, thank you, my partners. Yay, good job. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm telling you, this happens. And it happens when you least expect it, so practice. Okay, I think we've dwelled on this enough. So at this point, some people may say, well, that's crazy. I mean, you guys have lists. You guys have things that you do all the time, and you're telling me it's all this work. It would be better not to be married than do all that. Well, it's funny you say that. Jesus has a word for that. Let's go on. Even his disciples said, no, go back. If those are the terms of marriage, we're stuck. It would be better not to get married. Here's what he says, and I love what he says. You're right. Not everyone is mature enough to handle that. It requires a certain aptitude and grace. But if you're capable, do it. That's what he says. He doesn't even play softball at all. You're right. If you can't handle that, I'd rather you didn't. Because it's a lot bigger than what you're thinking. It's not all cheesecake and fun, okay? So, if you are ready, though, here's two things you've got to do. One is you've got to cleave to each other, or really it's just honor what God has already put together and commit to that. Second thing is you've got to put Jesus at the head of this thing, because you're not going to be able to do that without him. In your own power, you are not going to be able to hold this thing together and be what I just talked about. You're going to have to put Jesus first. That's a weird thing, huh? I mean, to put your spouse and stay with your spouse, you got to put her second or him second is true. You got to put Jesus first. For accountability, I'm not just accountable to my wife. I am accountable to my Maker. And for strength, I'm not doing this in my own power. He's living in me and doing this when I'm weak. And for intimacy, don't buy the lie that any person can make you totally happy. It's a lie, and all it's going to do is disappoint you. Jesus has to meet your needs first. So then you can focus on working on your partner's needs, right? It's easy to say. You wait. If you're not married yet, you'll remember this. Because you'll say, man, I thought my partner was awesome. And then she doesn't do this, that, and the other. Or he didn't do this, that, and the other. Maybe something else looks better. Maybe that field over there would be nicer. I'm telling you, it happens. Anybody who's in here who's been married for a long time knows it happens. You got to go to the Lord first. Here's what Drs. Leslie and Les Perot said. If you've been in seminary, you probably studied some of their stuff. Without a deep dependency on Christ as the ultimate source of your security and significance, a marriage relationship cannot support the commitment of ministry to the deepest needs of each other. Without Jesus first, you cannot do what the Lord is asking you to do. In other words, it has to be a Christian marriage, really. Now, it's a good time to mention some secular wisdom on this, okay? Because there are a lot of great books out there about how to keep your marriage together. Here's one that's very popular. It's called His Needs, Her Needs, Building an Affair-Proof Marriage. It's a New York bestseller. Somebody in this room might even have it. I have a copy. All right, here's what he says. He says, the author says there's 5 needs that every guy needs and 5 needs that every girl needs. If you supply these 5 needs, you will be irresistible to your partner. That's what the book says. Sounds nice. Are you ready for them? You can guess. You any guess what the guy's first need is? Yeah. So, number 1, he cannot do without sexual fulfillment. Number 2, he cannot do without recreational companionship. Number 3, he must be attracted to her. Number 4, he needs her domestic help and support. Number 5, he needs her to be proud of him. The female, she cannot do without affection. She cannot do without intimate conversation. She needs him to open up to her completely. She needs him to make enough money to provide financial security. She needs him to be a good father. Now, chances are you've heard lists like this. And to be honest, some of these probably aren't off base for what you think, what you feel. I mean, they're reasonable. Okay, that's fine. So it gets part of it right. What he gets right in this book is you should think about, what am I looking for out of my marriage? You should. And you should think about sitting down. You should not think about, you should do. You should sit down with your partner and say, look, I'm just going to tell you, these are the things I'm looking for from you. You should do that. And when your partner does that, you should take them seriously. If it's important to them, it should be important to you. That's right. Now, here's where it goes south bad. Okay. Here's where it's not Christian marriage. Here's what Dr. Harley says about these needs. Well, maybe you're asking yourself after you read this book, should I be concerned that my wife will have an affair if I don't meet these needs? My answer is yes when it comes to the needs described in this book. Whatever happened to commitment, you say? And what about trust? Well, I'm all for that. But when a spouse lacks fulfillment in any one of these things, it creates a thirst that must be quenched. He or she cannot control it. You have to be better at all 5 than anyone else is at any one. Can you see how this is not Christian marriage all of a sudden? Okay. Christian marriage is commitment first. Christian marriage is, I am for you no matter what you do or do not do for me. Yeah? Okay. It's good to know needs, but here's what he's saying. Husband or wife, now you know. You have the secret information about what your spouse needs. As long as you do them all better than anyone, they probably won't leave you or have an affair. That message is wrapped up in a pretty bow, but that's torture. I mean, essentially, you're doing it for you, are you not? So you don't lose your mate? I mean, you're just trying to keep up with your partner so they don't check out. That's not love. You know what else it is? It's a list of things to look at your spouse and say, wow, well, they're not doing that very well, are they? And we actually do that a lot that's works versus grace, isn't it? Or something to feel guilty about. Man, I'm not as good as I should be there. I don't make as much money, or I have a lot of trouble talking intimately like I should. Man, maybe I'm not a very good husband. Maybe I should just get out of this thing. It's both. It gives you reason to be guilty and reasons to look at your spouse and say, well, you're not as pretty as this person. Right? That's terrible. The Lord is not about what we take. He's about giving. He is about what I said before. He is about, I will never leave you or forsake you. When you gave yourself to me, I am for you, whether you do one or none of these things. That is the real thing. Okay. Before I leave commitment, I want to share with you a clip from the most romantic movie, definitely the most romantic movie scene of all time. Are you ready? Okay.
Leave space. Sometimes that space is so big that the roof can't support itself, so it collapses. Excuse me. Try not to be too loud. Hi. What's going on? Are you okay?
Can we go to Vegas?
What?
Can we go to Niagara Falls? I'm on Fiji. I want to go to Fiji.
Sure.
Okay, let's go. Come on. Let's just go.
Hey, come here. What's the matter?
I just feel like we can't get married. Not like this. It's like when I'm with you, I am so happy. But my family is so unhappy. And our wedding should be this joyous thing, but it won't be for them because it can't be in our church. So let's just go somewhere. Please, let's just go. Let's just go.
Hey, I love you.
Why? Why do you love me?
Because I came alive when I met you.
But my family.
You're a part of your family. And I'll do anything. Whatever it takes to get them to accept me. Because you're my life now. You're my whole life now. We're not going to skulk off and get married as if we're ashamed of ourselves. Okay?
Did you say skulk? It's just skulk off. So.
Very good. Okay, so that's my big fat Greek wedding. If you haven't seen it, there definitely is something wrong with you. Did you hear what he said? He said, I love you. I came alive when I met you, and I'll do anything. That's what he said. And it wasn't a mask. If you've seen the movie, he didn't just pretend. He really became one with that family if that's what it took. That's commitment. And that's what the Lord wants. So we're going to end our time with one last thought. We're going to go to cherishing. Paul built on this idea of committing, cherishing the person you've committed to, out of really appreciation for them committing to you. So we read Ephesians 5, and we studied it in great detail a few weeks ago. I'm just going to bounce across it just to give an idea that he was talking to people who had no clue what commitment was, and certainly were not thinking anything about actually caring for their spouse. And so he changed the way people think, particularly about women. I want you to actually spend time with this person. And I want you to devote yourself to this person. Let's see what he says. Ephesians 5, 21 through 30. Out of respect for Christ, be courteously reverent to one another. Wives, understand and support your husband in ways that show your love and support for Christ. Husbands, go all out in your love for your wives exactly as Christ did for the church, a love by giving and not getting. No one abuses his own body, does he? No, he feeds and pampers it. That's how Christ treats us. For this, a man leaves his father and mother and cherishes his wife. No longer two, they are one. Okay, and one more. What's clearest to me is the example Christ gave to the church. This provides a good example of how each husband should treat his wife, loving himself and loving her, and how each wife is to honor her husband. Paul is showing a culture that is bent on selfishness and carelessness, how to care for other people, how to be about what I can put into this thing rather than what I can take out. So here's the end of today. You are no longer two if you're married. You are one now. You need to be there for each other, to lift each other up, to help each other out. Be more together than you were alone. And for the Lord's sake, fight for that. Put on your gloves and fight for it. There's no shame in that. Don't let your dumb friends out there say, well, I don't know, you're giving up anything. There's a scene from this movie I love where Ian's friend says, man, really? I mean, you're just going to jump however high you need to for this girl? And he says, yeah, sure. And then his friend goes, okay, I see. Cool, right? Don't let your friends tell you what you ought to do and what you ought to not do. Let the Lord tell you and be with each other. Commit, cherish, cleave together. Okay, last thing we're going to do here is I'm going to send you away with an action. All right, because it would be no good to have all this cool stuff and then nothing to do. Here's what I want you to do before the end of the day. Realize that all this work is worth it because you have come alive with this person you're with now. Or if you're not married yet, you will come alive with this person who the Lord is bringing to you and you to them. Here's what I want you to do if you're married. I want you to sit down today. This is difficult. And I want you to say this: I am cleaved to you by God. Here are the things I'm looking for in our marriage. Go ahead, say them. I will look to God first for these things, then for you. Whether you meet all of them, and I do want you to, or none of them, I am committed to you until I go home to the Lord. Okay? I will never look for these things in anyone else. I will cherish you and make your needs important to me. I am thankful for you and us. I want our marriage to glorify the Lord. I'll fight for it. I want you to say that to your partners today. Can you have the courage to do that? Okay. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this message.